12 years of. The knife clattered against the marble counter, loud enough to startle me, even though I was the one holding it. 12 years of. A streak of butter spread across the polished surface, already melting under the kitchen's relentless heat. Steam hissed from pots, the oven timer shrieked, and somewhere behind me a glass shattered. My mother's voice following instantly, sharp as glass itself. "Lily, watch what you're doing. We don't have time for mistakes. Sarah's guests will be here in less than 4 hours." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. My silence had become part of the household symphony. Clanging pans, boiling water, scolding orders, and my muted compliance. I wiped the butter from the counter, lifted another pan, and reminded myself not to grip too tightly. My palms still bore faint scars from years of burns. Behind me, laughter drifted in from the living room where golden light poured through the floor to ceiling windows. My sister Sarah's voice rang high and polished, performing for her audience like a violinist, playing a familiar concerto. Every chuckle of approval from her friends carried through the walls like an applause track. The dividing line between us had always been clear. Sarah's world glowed with champagne and expensive perfume. Mine smelled of garlic, scorched pans, and fatigue. I was the daughter hidden behind swinging kitchen doors. Of the hands that produced the meals, but never raised a glass at the table. The Sullivan estate sparkled for Christmas. Garlands wound along the banisters. Crystal ornaments glittered on the towering tree, and firelight shimmered across portraits of ancestors who stared down with unyielding pride. I had hung those ornaments, arranged those garlands, polished that silver. My fingerprints were everywhere, yet no one ever saw me. "Lily." My father's voice joined the chorus now, low but firm. He appeared in the doorway, his tailored suit catching the light. "You're falling behind. Sarah has important people coming tonight. Don't embarrass your mother." I swallowed back, the bitter taste in my mouth. Important people. That phrase followed me like a curse. Important people for whom I was expected to cook, clean, and disappear. Important people who never once asked the maid in the kitchen what her name was. "Yes, Dad," I murmured, my voice nearly drowned by the sizzle of the pan. He left without a nod, footsteps fading toward the clinking glasses and polished laughter. The kitchen clock read 3:12 p.m. By midnight, I knew I would be a ghost, slipping out unseen, cleaning up empty wine bottles and crumpled napkins while Sarah basked in praise for hosting a flawless evening. 15 years of this routine had trained me into invisibility. But tonight, something was different. Something restless buzzed in my chest, louder than the timer, sharper than my mother's voice. It began when I glanced at my phone, hidden between folded towels by the sink. The screen lit up with an email. Subject, line final draft approved. "Congratulations, CEO Sullivan." My breath caught. The world beyond these walls pulsed in that small rectangle of light, a world my family pretended didn't exist. A world where my name was followed not by maid, cook, or disappointment, but by CEO. No one here knew about stellar events. No one had asked. No one cared to. I set the phone down carefully, my fingers trembling, and lifted a silver tray loaded with glasses. In the reflection of the polished surface, I saw myself, not the invisible servant, but a woman who had built something monumental without anyone in this house noticing. I didn't know it yet, but tonight would be the last time I carried a tray for them. The dining room shimmered when I stepped inside. Candlelight bounced off crystal, painting the walls with flickers of gold. My mother inspected the table with military precision, adjusting a fork here, a napkin fold there. Her lips pursed in concentration. "Finally," she muttered, snatching a glass from the tray before I could set it down. "Don't just stand there. The caviar still isn't plated. Do I have to tell you everything twice? Across the room. Sarah twirled a strand of hair around her finger while laughing at something a young man in a tailored blazer said. She looked radiant, every inch the golden child, sipping champagne like it was born in her hand. I caught her eye briefly. She smirked, a silent reminder of where we each stood. And for the first time, I didn't look away. Something inside me cracked. Not loud like a plate shattering, but quiet. Like a seam finally giving way under too much weight. I excused myself with a soft nod and slipped back into the kitchen. My phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't email, it was a reminder. Flight 447 to Miami. Departure 800 p.m. Check in now. My throat tightened. The timing was cruel, almost cinematic. While my family expected me to orchestrate a feast, the universe whispered an invitation leave. Choose yourself. Steam fogged the windows, blurring the snowy landscape outside. I stood still, caught between two worlds. The one that used me, and the one I had secretly built. The kitchen door swung open. My mother swept in, her perfume sharp, her tone sharper. What are you standing around for? Sarah's friends are arriving. You don't want to humiliate us, do you? Humiliate us. The words burned hotter than the stove. For 15 years, I had cooked their meals, polished their silver, and silenced my own life. All so they wouldn't feel humiliated. And in return, they called me invisible, unemployed, useless. Something inside me rose higher than the steam, stronger than the fear. No, I said softly, meeting her eyes for the first time. I don't. The tray trembled in my hands. Not from weakness this time, but from the weight of a choice. A choice that, once made, would change everything. The opening act of my story didn't begin with fireworks or applause. It began in a kitchen, with butter melting across marble and a daughter deciding she was done being invisible. And by the time the candles burned low and the laughter in the living room turned uneasy, no one, not my mother, not my father, not even Sarah, would ever look at me the same way again. Because the servant they dismissed wasn't a servant at all. She was the boss they never saw coming. Oh, snow pressed against the windows in soft, white silence, a cruel contrast to the storm building inside me. I stood in the kitchen, apron dusted, with flour, staring at the boarding pass glowing on my phone. Flight 447 to Miami. Boarding 7:30 p.m. It wasn't just a flight. It was the threshold between two versions of myself. The daughter trapped in her family's shadow. And the woman who had fought tooth and nail to build a name that didn't depend on theirs. Lily. My sister's voice sliced through the quiet like a champagne cork popping. The kitchen door swung open, and Sarah leaned against the frame, her red dress shimmering under the chandelier light. She looked every inch the star of the evening. Mom says the duck confit isn't even started. What have you been doing? I gripped the counter, knuckles white. Breathe. Don't answer yet. Sarah sauntered inside, her perfume sweet and suffocating. She plucked a grape from the fruit tray I'd been arranging. You know, she said with mock sympathy, you should be grateful. At least you're useful in the kitchen. Not everyone gets to contribute. Her words stung less than they used to. Maybe because I'd finally begun to see them for what they were. Rehearsed lines from a script our parents had written years ago. Sarah was the golden child, bathed in light. I was the shadow she was instructed to outshine. Contribute, I said slowly, surprising even myself with the steadiness of my voice. I've been contributing my whole life. Sarah laughed, tossing the grape into her mouth. Don't be dramatic, you just cook. Just cook. If she only knew about the contracts signed under my name, the staff who called me boss. 12 years of. The Forbes editor waiting on my final approval for the profile that would put my face on newsstands across the country. But she didn't know. None of them did. "Get the duck in the oven," Sarah said, already turning back toward the living room. "And don't embarrass me tonight. There are people coming who could actually change my career." The door swung shut behind her. And there it was, the heart of the matter. To them, everything I did was invisible. Yet everything Sarah touched was monumental. They never noticed the irony. 12 years of. That the executives she wanted to impress tonight were the same ones who had already shaken my hand in quiet boardrooms, signing contracts worth millions. The kitchen felt smaller suddenly, its heat unbearable. I tugged the apron strings loose and tossed the fabric onto the counter. The gesture felt like ripping off a disguise. My phone buzzed again. A message from my assistant reminder. Dinner meeting with Pinnacle's CEO confirmed. "She's excited to meet you in person." Finally, my pulse quickened. Pinnacle. Victoria Chen. The very woman whose name my mother had been throwing around all week like a magic charm. They thought she was Sarah's golden ticket. But she was already mine. The irony twisted into something electric. 12 years of. Almost dangerous. And for the first time I wondered, what would happen if my two worlds collided under the same roof? The kitchen clock ticked toward 5, each second loud enough to echo in my chest. Guests would arrive in 2 hours. My mother's footsteps clicked across the hardwood, the rhythm of a general inspecting troops. She swept in with her usual authority, pearls glinting against her silk blouse. "Lily, where is the amuse, Bochi? And the table still isn't perfect. Honestly, if I didn't stay on top of you." "Mom?" My voice was sharper than I intended. Her head snapped up, startled, as if the servant had dared to speak out of turn. "I can't stay tonight," I said, the words tumbling out before I could soften them. The silence that followed was heavier than the thick December air. My mother's eyes narrowed. "Excuse me." "I have a flight," I continued. My throat tightened, but I forced the words through. "I have business in Miami. I'm leaving." Her laugh was brittle, humorless. "Business? Don't be ridiculous. You don't have business. You have family obligations. Sarah's hosting executives. People who matter. You'll do as you're told. People who matter." The old wound reopened with a sting. "I'm not your servant," I whispered. For a moment, the room tilted. I half expected her to slap me for the audacity. Instead, her lips curled into a smirk. "If you walk out that door, Lily, don't bother coming back." The ultimatum. Her favorite weapon. But this time, something shifted. Maybe it was the way my suitcase sat already packed in the hallway closet. Maybe it was the email still glowing on my phone, reminding me that my work, my company, my name mattered to someone beyond these walls. I straightened, wiping flour from my hands onto the apron I had already abandoned. "Then maybe I won't." Her face drained of color. Before she could respond, my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen and froze. A forwarded guest list. From Sarah. At the top, highlighted in boldy, Victoria Chen, CEO, Pinnacle Hospitality. My breath caught. The same woman I was scheduled to meet tomorrow in Miami was coming here tonight. To this house. The world narrowed to a single impossible fact. If I stayed, I would be serving dinner to the very CEO who thought she was about to meet me as an equal partner. If I left, my family would crumble without me, and they'd drag my name down with them. I felt the air leave my lungs as my mother spoke again, oblivious to the storm raging inside me. "See, Sarah has secured someone truly valuable. Don't ruin this, Lily, a valuable." They thought Sarah had brought Victoria here to elevate their reputation. They didn't realize Victoria was already mine. Two worlds I had kept carefully apart for years were about to collide under the same chandelier. And for the first time in my life, the choice wasn't just between obeying or rebelling. It was between hiding my truth, or letting the truth burn everything down. By 6:30, the Sullivan estate glowed like a palace. Candles flickered on every mantel. The chandelier spilled golden light across polished silverware, and the air buzzed with the hum of arriving cars, crunching snow on the driveway. Through the frosted glass of the front door, I saw silhouettes gathering. Sarah's friends, Sarah's executives, Sarah's important people. My apron still hung abandoned in the kitchen, a silent rebellion against the role I'd played for 15 years. I stood at the sink, heart hammering, while my mother barked orders in the dining room. Check the wine temperature, Sarah. Lily? Where are the hors d'oeuvres? Lily? I didn't move. Sarah burst into the kitchen. A perfect smile stretched across her face for the benefit of the guests, still hanging up coats in the foyer. The second the door swung shut, her voice dropped to a hiss. What are you doing? Mom says the food isn't ready. Don't ruin this for me. I gripped the counter edge, steadying myself. I told Mom, I'm leaving tonight. Oh, her eyes widened. Leaving? Are you insane? Victoria Chen is coming. Do you even know who she is? The irony sliced through me like a blade. Do I know who she is? Sarah couldn't imagine the truth, that Victoria Chen was already penciled into my calendar, not hers. I know exactly who she is, I said quietly. Sarah scoffed. Right. Like you'd ever meet someone like her. Just get the food out before you humiliate us all. My throat tightened. Humiliate. That word again. Always hovering over me. Like my existence itself was an embarrassment, unless I scrubbed it clean through service. Outside the door, laughter swelled as guests mingled. The sound rattled me, because in that crowd was Victoria Chen. The woman whose signature on tomorrow's contract would catapult my company onto the national stage. If she saw me tonight, in this kitchen, apron tied, head down, would she still respect me as a CEO tomorrow? Or would she see only what my family sawed? A daughter too weak to demand more than scraps. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I slipped it out, shielding the screen from Sarah's prying eyes. A new message from my assistant. Board meeting confirmed. Chen wants you front and center tomorrow. No substitutes. The weight of it pressed against my chest. 50 employees depending on me. A 2,000 million contract. Years of work. Sacrifice and silence. All threatened by one evening in this house. Sarah's voice cut in again, sharp with panic now. For God's sake, Lily, don't just stand there. Do something. I looked at her. The golden sister. Years of. Flawless in her red dress, polished and adored. Then I looked at the empty platters waiting on the counter, the apron, the knives, the boiling pots. The tools of a role I never chose. My hands were steady when I untied the apron fully, folding it with deliberate care. I placed it on the counter, then slid my packed suitcase from beneath the coat rack by the back door. Sarah's mouth fell open. You're not serious. I am, I said, my voice low but unshakable. The muffled sound of the front door opening carried into the kitchen. A new wave of greetings rose. Applause, laughter. The energy shifting. And then I heard a name, clear and distinct, spoken with reverence. Ms. Chen. Welcome. My pulse spiked. She was here? Victoria Chen had just stepped into my parents' house. And with her arrival, the two worlds I had kept apart, family and empire, humiliation and power, were seconds away from colliding. 12 years of. The dining room shimmered with candlelight, but beneath the glow lay tension sharp enough to cut. Guests filled the air with practiced laughter, glasses clinking against crystal. At the head of the table, my mother floated like a queen, Sarah gleaming at her side. And then, her. Victoria Chen. She stepped into the room with effortless authority, dark suit tailored to perfection. eyes scanning the space like she was already measuring it. The kind of presence that bent a room around her. And there I was, half, hidden in the kitchen doorway, watching. My pulse thundered in my ears. If she saw me carrying trays, bending to refill glasses, the illusion I'd built for 5 years would shatter in an instant. "Margaret," Victoria said smoothly, extending a hand to my mother. "Thank you for the invitation. I've heard such lavish things about tonight's meal." Lavish. My mother preened at the word, her pearls catching the light. "Oh, you'll love it," she promised. My daughter prepared everything herself. She tilted her head toward Sarah, who nodded graciously, basking in the lie. The breath caught in my throat. Not once. Not in 15 years. Had my mother introduced me as the one who cooked every holiday, every feast. But tonight, to impress, she offered my work as Sarah's crown jewel. The lie curdled in my stomach. Victoria smiled politely and took her seat. Moments later, plates were expected, whispers of anticipation circling the table. But the kitchen stood bare. No duck confit, no amuse, bochi. No 7-course feast. Only empty trays and my packed suitcase waiting by the back door. From the dining room came a pause, short, uneasy. My mother's voice sliced the silence. "Lily?" "The food." Now, every head turned toward the kitchen door. Toward me. The room blurred for a second. Breath locked in my chest. I saw Sarah's smirk, sharp, certain I'd cave. I saw my father's frown, already bracing for disappointment. And then Victoria's gaze landed on me. Steady, curious, unblinking. The moment stretched. I stepped forward. The weight of the house pressing on me, every portrait on the wall watching. My palms no longer shook. I wasn't carrying a tray this time. I was carrying truth. "There is no meal," I said. My voice, even but ringing clear enough to still the room. "Because I'm not your servant anymore." A gasps fluttered like wings around the table. My mother rose halfway from her chair, face burning. "What nonsense is this? Do you want to humiliate us in front of important people?" "Yes," I said softly. "If it means finally being seen." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was electric. Victoria tilted her head, her gaze sharpening. "And you are." The air throbbed with expectation. My mother opened her mouth to dismiss me, but I beat her to it. "My name is Lily Sullivan," I said, straightening to my full height. "CEO of Stellar Events." The words detonated in the room. Sarah's glass slipped from her hand, shattering across the floor. My mother froze, lips parted, as if the sound had ripped oxygen from her lungs. But it was Victoria's reaction that seared the moment into memory. Her eyes widening, recognition flashing. Not confusion, recognition. Because she already knew my name. And in that candlelit silence, with shards of glass scattered at Sarah's feet, I realized the truth had finally stepped out from the kitchen. And it wasn't going back in. Morning light spilled across the glass walls of the Pinnacle boardroom, painting the polished table in shades of gold. Outside, the Atlantic glittered. Inside, silence pressed tight as every executive's eyes shifted between Victoria Chen and me. In front of me lay the contract. 5 years of sacrifice distilled into a stack of papers, waiting for my signature. Victoria leaned forward, her gaze steady. "So, the woman your family dismissed as unreliable, unworthy, is the same woman we're about to entrust with our largest expansion in a decade." I didn't flinch. Less. The room absorbed it. My mother's words, failure, servant, disappointment, echoed faintly in the silence. But they sounded small now. Fragile. Victoria smiled. "Then let's put it in writing." The pen slid into my hand. My signature swept across the page, ink flowing like liberation itself. The weight of 15 years lifted in that motion, leaving something sharp, clean, and unshakable in its place. Applause broke the tension. Hands reached to shake mine. Cameras flashed. But above the noise, I heard my phone buzzing relentlessly. Missed calls. Dozens. Sarah, my mother. Even my father. Their voices, once a leash, now nothing but static. Victoria touched my arm gently, a conspiratorial glint in her eyes. Last night, your mother offered me excuses and apologies over cold pizza. Today, you've offered me clarity. I know which one I prefer. The room laughed softly. I exhaled. Hours later, back in my suite overlooking the sea, I finally listened to one voicemail. My father's voice? Thin with something like regret. We didn't know. Lily. We should have asked. We should have seen you. Please come home. I stared at the phone, then set it down. For once, I didn't feel the pull to explain or defend. Their blindness was not my burden anymore. Instead, I opened the curtains wider. The horizon stretched endless, unbroken. My empire was no longer hidden in silence. It stood tall, visible, undeniable. Weeks later, I agreed to meet them. Not at the estate where I'd been invisible, but in my office. Glass walls, bustling staff. A skyline that belonged to me. My parents arrived smaller than I remembered. Sarah subdued, no red dress, no smirk. They saw the space, the people who greeted me as boss, the photos of events I had orchestrated across the world. For once, they didn't have words. I handed them a single-page agreement. If we rebuild, it's on my terms. Equal respect. No more servants and golden children. And if you can't accept that, then this is where our story ends. My mother's eyes filled with tears. My father nodded once. Sarah whispered, almost to herself, I never realized you were the sun we were orbiting. I didn't answer. Some truths don't need validation. That evening, alone, I poured a glass of wine by my window. The city pulsed below, alive and glittering. My reflection stared back. No apron, no shadow, no disguise. My name is Lily Sullivan, I said quietly to the glass. CEO, daughter. Woman, not your maid. Never again. And for the first time, the words didn't feel like defiance. They felt like home.